Getting Expressions is a fantastic program and a fantastic way to fund getting scriptures out into the world. One, which ended up in the hands of our next guest, who I'd like to introduce to you right now. He's a friend of mine. He's a personal friend of mine who I met about 3 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago at my home church in Langley, Christian Life Assembly. And I saw this young man, like myself, who was good looking, attractive, humble, and on fire for Jesus. And I thought to myself, I got to meet that guy. And so I introduced myself to Kevin one Sunday, and we decided to go have coffee, and we went to Starbucks, my second favorite place in the world. And we sat down, and he began to share his story with me. A story which included getting a Gideon Bible, which deeply impacted his life. And when you want to talk about redemption, this is a story of redemption. I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I've told his testimony. Come on up, Kevin. He's shared with me at Gideon banquets before. Yeah, let's welcome Kevin Bralovich. Kevin is a man of God that is now being used powerfully by God. God has done amazing things. His beautiful wife, Dawn, is over there with him, and they came out to share how the ministry of the Gideons has deeply impacted his life and the lives of others through his life. God bless you, Kevin.
Thank you, Casey. Just a real quick thing on Casey. He introduced me so nicely, and that was awesome. The first time I actually saw Casey was at a men's encounter at our church. And this was going back about 4 years ago when he was a younger, maybe even hipper. His hair was a little more different, a little bigger. He was very mod, very fantastic, very fired up preacher man teaching at a men's encounter on a weekend. And I felt the power of God being spoken through Casey. And I actually passed by him in the bathroom and I felt a little intimidated. I was like, oh, there's the preacher guy. I'm like, hi. And I said something to myself. I said, boy, I could never do what he does. Get up on a stage. If you ever want to challenge God, start with those words, I couldn't, or I'll never do that. Because chances are pretty good God's going to do some amazing things in your life in that area. So thank you so much, Gideons International in Canada, for having my wife and I out to be part of this convention. We're greatly honored, and it's such a privilege to be with you all and to get to share this awesome story. And I'm so grateful to all of you and this ministry for being a part of changing my life and my family's life. So I'll get started with my story. Grew up born and raised in Vancouver. Got the beautiful flight here from Vancouver yesterday. Was raised in a Christian home. However, from a young age, I was taught a lot, and you hear this quite often in many circles, rules. And my whole life kind of revolved around rules. So at a young age, say 14, 15, my heart and my mind and anything towards God was bent towards the world because I wanted nothing to do with all the rules that were being forced upon me. My folks sent me to Christian school. I went to Sunday school, did all the church things, and I learned the church stuff growing up, but I wanted nothing to do with it. 15 years old, I told my parents I wanted out of private school, Christian school. I was walking away, rebellious heart. I wanted to change. I wanted to do my own thing. So that's what I did. Fast forwarding a little further on, drugs, alcohol, smoking. This is what I wanted to chase. Women. This was my life as a young man. Now, overall, my life, in comparison to other people who were way worse off than me, I was actually doing pretty good. However, the future was going to be grim as my story would progress. I met my wife at the age of 19. 19, I was a young bread man. I had a bread route, so I call myself a bread man. That's what I was. I met her on my bread route at a mall, and we got connected so fast, and we got married within how many months? 6 months? Yeah, we got married within 6 months. When I met my wife, I thought, this is my ticket out of this life. At this point, I was selling cocaine, weekend partying, just doing a bunch of stuff I shouldn't be. And I said, hey, this is my ticket out. I got this woman, I want to impress her. I put on my Christian face. I call it the God facade. I knew all the right words to say. I knew all the right stuff to do. And we got married. We went through the Christian counseling. We did the whole bit. A week before we tied the knot, I got introduced to my new first love, crystal meth. A horrible, horrible drug, but it seemed to be a good idea at the time for me. There was lots of stresses and pressures of getting married. I'd had to get up for work, 2 a.m. to go to work, had lots of family in town. It seemed to work for me. I was hooked instantly. I carried that right through my wedding day and right into my marriage. Within the first few months of getting married, or of being married, my wife finally found out. Her friends confronted me, and her friends actually let her know that, yeah, your husband's on speed. He's a druggie. Well, my first bit with rehab happened shortly after getting married, and this was an ongoing thing. I would go to rehab. I would either quit or I would fail. We had our daughter in this time. So for a number of years, this went on. And as all of you well know, with addiction, the story doesn't start and stop with just doing the drugs. What happens with that is the lies, the cheating, the theft, the brokenness, the losing of everything. So in and out of rehab, my wife, for some reason, would stay with me through all this, through the thick and thin. However, she wasn't always right by my side because I was doing some crazy stuff. I went from nice young man to stealing cars, to breaking into homes. It finally got to the point where my wife and I discussed it, and we said, we need to get out of this town. We said Langley, where we were living, is not the place for us. So we decided we're going to move to Nova Scotia. We're going to go from here to here. Naturally, running away from my problems, that'll take care of it, right? Yeah. I rolled into Nova Scotia on a foggy morning into a little town called Tatamagouche. You ever hear of it? Yeah, I didn't think so. A couple of you. I thought, where on earth am I? This place sucks. I didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections. I did not last there. We had a new life. We thought we could do it. 2 to 3 weeks later, I had already found myself at the local school trying to get some, actually bought Ritalin, which is drugs off some kids, pharmaceuticals. 3 weeks into my stay there, I walked up to my daughter and my wife, who were sleeping in the upstairs room because they knew that I was not right. I walked up there and I said to them, I kissed them both on the forehead and I said, I can't stay here. I gotta go. And I got in my car at about midnight and I drove back to BC. 5-day trip. I needed those drugs. I got back here and the course of my life went way further down the tubes. The thefts got bigger. The scores got larger. The addiction got deeper. The lostness got loster. The brokenness got brokener. I didn't think I could go any further. Within my second day back in BC, I got my first criminal charge. And then I got and when you get one, you usually get 4 or 5 at a time. So I got 5 in one crack. I'll tell you the story real quick. First time I got caught, I fell asleep in my car. And I got an officer waking me up in the morning on my window. And I got out of my car, and a crowbar falls off of my lap onto the ground. So naturally busted. Anyway, so the course of my life started getting worse and worse, and I ended up getting in and out of custody back and forth. They kept letting me out until I racked up about 42 charges, promised to appear in courts. Finally, one morning, I knew when the police officer pulled up behind me that this was the last day I was going to see freedom. They pulled me in, they brought me in, put me in the red pajama suit, said, "This is where you're going to stay for a while in jail." That was when I was really broken. So I cleaned up in jail, got the drugs out of my system. I was crying a lot. Started to examine my life. I heard about a church service in there, and I ended up going to this little church service in the jail system. And in that service, picked up a little O2 edition Gideon's Bible. Doesn't look like much, but it packs a punch. I took that back to my cell and I started to read it. And as I started to read it, it's like the words jumped off the page right into my heart. All the stuff I thought I knew about God was actually being revealed to me, and the truth came out. I'm just going to pause right there. The Bible says, every word of the Lord proves true. And he's a shield to those who come to him for protection. Every word. So I started thinking, what were the words that were standing out to me? I can't remember back exactly what the words were that spoke to me. It didn't matter. Every word was speaking to my heart. Amen. The very life I was clinging to was the one I needed to lose. We got that next verse. It's in Matthew 10:39. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. That's the words of Jesus. So the guys went out to yard one day. I held back in my cell, grabbed my little Bible. I got down on my knees. I was looking at 4 to 5 years in prison. I got down on my knees and said, God, if you get me out of this jam, I promise to serve you forever. And it was right there where I stopped clinging to that life. I stopped clinging to the world. I stopped clinging to the sin. And I gave it over to Jesus. And he didn't say, no, you lied too much. He didn't say, no, you stole too many things. You wrecked too many people's lives. He never said any of that. What he did say was, you are forgiven. You are a child of God. And what he did was he took my rotten heart and he completely changed me right there on the spot, never to be the same again. I was still in jail, but I walked into a courtroom about a week later, and my wife, bless her heart, she'd been working behind the scenes with a treatment facility back in Nova Scotia. So picture me, I'm in Surrey, BC. My wife is in Nova Scotia, Am I doing the east-west thing okay here? I walked into a courtroom and we begged the judge to send me to Nova Scotia to a recovery facility for a year. They dropped 32 charges, stuck me with 10, and told me to get out of my province. That's what the judge says. Get out of my province. I flew out the next morning to start a new life. I went to a treatment facility. God had a hold of my heart. God had a hold of my heart from the second I said, it's yours. So much to the fact that it's like that. Maybe my first witnessing, which was a pretty poor attempt, there was a guy above me in the jail cell, and he was whimpering because he got beat up for eating too much bread. And I just called out to him. I said, hey, man, do you pray? He's like, no. I said, well, you should. It works. So that was my first attempt anyway. And it was a little bit, I can go a little harder now, but anyways, my life got turned upside down. From then I went to this farm. I stayed there for 8 months out of a one-year sentence. God had a hold of my heart. I went up to my room and I would read this every night instead of getting involved with all the riffraff that happened to be there. The director told me, hey, you got a chance here. There's no more we can do for you. They let me out after 8 months. I got to live my life back at home. Went home and started a new life with my family. We soon after that had another child. We got 2 children at this point, and we got to learn to walk life. I went to Nova Scotia to learn how to be a man. Started to walk with God. Got in tight with the church. Went to 2 different churches there. Both churches, I became tight with the pastor. 5 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago, I decided it was time to move back to BC. My wife looks at me like, you crazy? Like seriously, like she thought this was, she's like, oh, BC, it was just that horrible memory of what I used to be. So we hopped on a plane. We went out to Christmas. We saw that it was good. We came back to BC a month after Christmas. And I got to admit, at that point in my life, I was not super tight with God. Sometimes our walk with God goes in waves. But I walked into a church, and first message I heard was one that was calling to my heart by my good friend, Pastor Brent Canelon. And my hand went up just to, hey, I want to get tight with you again, God. Shortly thereafter, I was at a men's breakfast, and I started sharing my story at the men's breakfast. And once again, Pastor Brent heard my story, and he recommended that I check out this church called Recovery Church, a program or a church that we do at our home church, CLA. It's for recovery people. And my very first service, I went in there all prideful, thinking, I got this. What am I doing here? Like, these people are all broken. I'm so much better than them. And by the second or third song, it's like God punched me in the stomach with His Spirit and said, you are called here. I was called into ministry from walking into one church service, and I never stopped going there. Ever since that day, God's kept calling me to more and more. All we need to do is say yes. First it was, share your testimony. Then it was, can you preach? Then it was, can you come speak at a Gideon's banquet? And so on and so on. I now am, and right almost from the start, became part of a leadership team at Recovery Church. And I now have the privilege of running our street outreach program for Recovery Church. We have a church that serves around 300 people in the recovery community. And we're seeing lives get changed by the power of God, the power of His Word. And it's real, because everything in this book is real. Amen. So here I am today, blessed, have a beautiful family. God is doing amazing things, and even right to this very day, he's calling me to more and more. And I know that in the very near future, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions to either go my way or God's way. I'm pretty sure I know which way I'm going to go. So I want to thank you, Gideons, for strategically planting the Word of God in a little jail cell in Surrey so that a broken up junkie like myself at the time could pick it up and now can claim freedom in Jesus. I'm a completely new creation because God found me through this. Thank you.